Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be discussing Fortnite's brand new and incredibly interesting changes that they made to turbo building and building in general yesterday. So after update 10.20 was released, which changed turbo building delay from 0.05 seconds to 0.15 seconds, the community as a whole was very angry. I mean, hashtag RevertTurboBuilding was literally one of the top trending topics in the entire world. Because of this, and as I'm sure most of you guys are aware of by now, that change was actually reverted at around 4 PM Eastern Standard Time on August 28th, the day after the update. However, along with reverting turbo building, they actually made another really major change to building in Fortnite. And honestly, it's a super interesting change that I'm still not totally sure if it's going to have a positive impact on the game or a negative impact on the game. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so let me start this video off by reading Epic's official statement in the blog they posted titled Turbo Building Delay Update. It says, the turbo build delay adjustments we made yesterday to subsequent structure pieces placed have been changed back to their previous value of 0.05 seconds. Your ability to perform 90s and waterfall should feel exactly the same as it did before yesterday's change. But then here's where things get interesting. They say, we've also added some of the quote-unquote next steps that were mentioned in yesterday's turbo build changes blog, and we'll get into a little more detail about that later. But continuing with their statement, now when a structure is destroyed, there'll be a delay of 0.15 seconds before another structure can be placed in that same location. If 2 or more players attempt to build a structure in the same location at the same time right after a piece has been destroyed, a random roll will now determine which player's structure is placed. With this, we aim to reduce the impact that ping has on taking a wall, as well as mitigate situations where spamming walls in the same location prevents all incoming damage to the defender. Now usually, when there's a really major change to Fortnite like what I just read, it's very obvious to tell whether it's gonna be good or bad. When I read in update 10.20 that time between turbo builds was increased to 0.15 seconds, I knew right away that change was horrible and we were in big trouble. But with these new wall replace mechanics, as I alluded to in the intro of this video, I really have no clue if they're gonna be awesome or horrible, and even after I played a little bit last night, I'm still pretty undecided. And that may sound crazy to some of you because I bet your first reaction when you either read or heard the statement, a random roll will now determine which player's structure is placed, was something along the lines of, oh my god, they're adding even more RNG into the game by literally randomizing who gets to replace a structure after it's destroyed. And I'll be honest, that was my first reaction when I read it as well. And I totally understand why I see a bunch of players on Twitter right now reacting very negatively to this change. But then, as I thought about it more, I also realized that there's a really major positive here, and that's the fact that, as Epic stated, it really does ensure that replacing walls, or any structure for that matter, is no longer this super ping-dependent thing. If you're maybe a 40 plus ping player, and especially if you're considerably higher than that, this change is in all likelihood gonna end up being really good for you. Because in the past, if you ran into a 0 or even like a sub 20 ping player, you plain and simple wouldn't be able to replace their walls and they'd probably take your wall on the first try. That obviously doesn't seem very fair, especially since the only reliable way to actually lower your ping is to either change internet providers or literally move to a different state or even country. So even though adding more RNG into a game that already features a lot of it seems like a very bad idea on the surface, and I'll admit that there certainly are some negatives to that, I think it's much more fair for a 0 ping player to replace a 60 ping player's wall 5 out of 10 times instead of 10 out of 10 times, which is basically how it's been for the longest time. However, even though I think this change has a lot of positive potential, there's one thing about it that I know is bad. And that's the fact that there will still be a 0.15 second delay before another piece can be placed in the same location. This is a negative thing in my opinion because it basically means that bullets are going to sneak through your turbo build. When I played after update 10.20 before turbo building was reverted, I felt that people being able to spray through your builds was one of the most annoying effects of the turbo building nerf. Especially with the super powerful spray weapons like the minigun, silenced SMG, and burst SMG. And even though the mechs are so much worse now than they were at the beginning of the season, this 0.15 second delay means that brute rocket spam is still gonna be pretty powerful. But getting back to the new wall replace mechanics, a really interesting aspect of this change is that they don't tell us specifically what the percentage is that each player will get the wall. And you may be thinking, well, even though they didn't say it, it's just 50-50, right? I mean, that would logically make the most sense. However, the day before turbo building was reverted, Epic released a different blog post where they talked about changes that they were going to make to turbo building in the near future. And in that post, they specifically talked about this new RNG wall replace mechanic. Now, what I found most interesting was the fact that they said they're trying to decide between 3 different options for how the percentages for this mechanic would actually work. So at first, the blog states what we now know was officially implemented into the game. If a building piece is destroyed, server waits 0.15 seconds before allowing a rebuild. Players attempting to rebuild the destroyed piece during that 0.15 seconds are added to a list. But here's where it gets interesting. It says there are several potential ways to pick the winner that we're exploring. First option is a coin flip between people not currently owning the building piece. Second option is coin flip between everybody trying to build. And the final option is favor the person currently owning the building piece. At the end of delay and once the winner is chosen, the building piece is placed. Those options are a little confusing, so here's basically what they mean in simpler terms. The first is that only the people who didn't own the destroyed structure can be the ones who end up replacing it. So for example, if I get my wall destroyed and me and my enemy both go for the replace within the first 0.15 seconds, he'll get it every single time since I won't even have a chance because I own the initial structure that got destroyed. Now, I'm fairly confident that this isn't the option they ultimately decided to go with, because they definitely would have announced in the turbo building revert blog that the defending player in a wall replace situation is always going to lose. The second option they were considering is that everyone trying to replace the structure gets an equal chance. So let's say, same scenario as last time. I get my wall destroyed and me and my enemy both go for the replace. It'll literally be a 50-50 even chance that the game will choose either of us to be the one who gets their structure placed. And the final potential option was that every player who tried to replace within 0.5 seconds has a chance to get the wall, but the percentages will favor the player who got their structure destroyed initially. And even in here, they don't state what that percentage would actually be, so it could be as small as a 55-45 advantage, or maybe even as large as something like a 90-10 advantage. Now, I'm really surprised they aren't telling us which option they ultimately chose, and I guess we'll just have to keep playing and experimenting with it until we get an idea. Me personally, I hope they chose the last option of favoring the defending player. If they made it something like 70-30 or 75-25, to where you'll probably have to break and replace a wall 2 to 3 times on average, but you eventually will get it, at least that way the defending player has to always be fearful of losing their wall. But at the same time, odds are he won't lose his wall on the first try, so he'll have at least a few seconds to think of an escape plan. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on turbo building being reverted and the new RNG-based structure replace mechanic in Fortnite. Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.